Welcome. This talk is about sound healing with tuning forks. Now, this is what we're going to cover on this talk. Firstly, why work with tuning forks, then the tuning forks that are used in this course, what is integral sound healing, the 10-step process of integral sound healing, and how to work with tuning forks in each of the 10 steps. And then finally, we'll cover what you should do next. So why should you work with tuning forks? Well, first of all, each tuning fork has a specific frequency, and therefore each of them produces specific effects, physical, emotional, mental, on a soul and spiritual level as well. And on this course, we teach you all about these frequencies and the effects. But tuning forks are also very quiet to use. They are probably the most quiet of all the sound healing instruments, which means that you can use them anywhere, anytime without disturbing others. That means that you can easily work with them in a health clinic, for example, where you may have other therapists or healers working in the next door room, so you're not going to disturb them. And so that's a great option. Also, if you're working from home, then you won't be disturbing your neighbors when you use them. They're also very portable, which means that you can carry them with you to use anywhere, anytime. And some people, I do this as well, I usually have one in my bag, and it can be a bit of a first aid thing as well. And then tuning forks are extremely effective for sound healing, especially when applied within the 10 steps of integral sound healing, which is what we're going to cover on this talk now in more depth. So let's just remind ourselves, what are the tuning forks that are used on this course? And what we need to remember also is that there are now so many different types of tuning forks available. There are lots of different sets, and so we've narrowed it down to a few tuning forks for this course. So firstly, we're working with the unweighted harmonic spectrum set of 8. Now this is a set of 8 based on a Pythagorean tuning, and the 8 forks are the C, D, E, F, G, A, B and C. And I've listed there all the different frequencies of the forks. So the C is at 256, this is the low C in the set, and the high C is at 512. And you'll notice that the A in this set is 426.7 Hz, so it's not the A440, and that's what you get with this Pythagorean tuning. Now this set was originally devised and developed by John Beaulieu, and you can read more about Pythagorean tuning in his book, which is called, just wrote it down there, Human Tuning, Sound Healing with Tuning Forks. He also developed the weighted Otto set of 3, the 128 Hz, 64 Hz and the 32 Hz. And again, I recommend that you check out this resource, Human Tuning, Sound Healing with Tuning Forks, the book. He covers it in more depth there as well. But we have captured a lot of information about this in the videos and in other aspects of the course. I'm not going to dive into the specifics of that, of the techniques of how to use these forks in this talk. We're going to give you other material here. Alongside that, we use the weighted mid-ohm on this course, the 136.1 Hz, which also corresponds with the heart chakra as well. Okay, so let's have a look at what these forks look like. Now these are the sets that we sell. They are sets that come from India, and of course you're welcome to use any other set, the Biosonic set or any other set that you want. It's up to you what you choose, the quality and the price you go for. These tuning forks that we sell are very good value, they're accurate, they have a long sustain and they work really well, and they're probably half price or a third of the price of other forks, so they're good value, and that's what we aim to do. They're not necessarily the best quality, but they're extremely good value for their money, and they work very effectively. There is then the 128 Hz weighted, the 64 Hz weighted, the 32 Hz weighted, and then the mid-ohm weighted fork. And then this is what the 3 main activators that we use. There's the hard rubber puck, the softer red rubber puck, and then the rubber balled mallet, which you can tap the tuning forks with as well. So what is integral sound healing? Well, what we've now found after really trying and testing this approach with sound healing for over the last 13 years is that the healing is most profound and long-lasting and successful when we adopt integral perspectives and practices. And so we're drawing here on the work relating to the integral medicine models of Amit Goswami, Ken Wilber, and Marilyn Schlitz, and others. And in this sense, we work with sounds to facilitate healing in all 5 elements of consciousness: the physical, emotional, mental, soul, and spirit. So it's a very comprehensive approach. So Amos Goswami, for example, wrote a book called The Quantum Doctor, A Physicist's Guide to Health and Healing. Ken Wilber has written many books, and I've got 2 references here linked to introductory articles by him in PDF form that you're welcome to download. And then Marilyn Schlitz and others, she edited a book called Consciousness and Healing, Integral Approaches to Mind-Body Medicine. So this is the kind of background and theory and practices that we're drawing on here. And we've specifically now tried and tested and developed this 10-step process for integral sound healing, which we've outlined in a lot of depth in other videos for this course and related courses, and I'm just going to touch in on those here. But first of all, let's have a quick look at about how these tuning forks relate to these 5 elements of consciousness. So on a physical level, John Beaulieu has found that, and through the research that he did, which was very comprehensive, that the 128 Hz weighted fork placed on bones or on the connective tissues, such as muscles and so on, it does spike nitric oxide, or NO as it's called, and enhances the puffing of nitric oxide rhythms, the natural rhythms in the cells. And the benefits of doing this, the healing outcomes of this, the healing responses are amazing. So this enhances cell vitality, vascular flow, and heart healing. It destroys bacteria and viruses at a micro level, which naturally enhances our immune system and increases our ability to prevent and fight infections. It increases resistance to stress and helps to create greater levels of energy and stamina. This spiking of nitric oxide sharpens mental clarity and diminishes states of depression due to the balancing of the autonomic nervous system. And it also improves digestion and natural cleansing. So this is a very specific and very wide-ranging set of physical of benefits, of health benefits associated with the physical energy body. But there are also other aspects associated with working with these tuning forks in these sets. So next, on the emotional body, the emotional element of consciousness, the musical intervals that we can create with tuning forks in the harmonic spectrum set can release suppressed and repressed emotions associated with past trauma. And we'll dive into this in a bit more depth, but the benefits of that are tremendous. And on a mental, in relation to the mental element of consciousness, different musical intervals created with the tuning forks in these sets can help to cancel out unhealthy beliefs and reform new patterns of wellness. In relation to the soul element, again, different musical intervals created with the tuning forks can stimulate images, visions, symbols, colours, inner sounds, and these are all language of the soul. The soul is this interface between the source energy, our spirit, which come on to next, and these other, the mental, emotional, physical aspects of our being, and it talks to us in this kind of language. And working with tuning forks and certain musical intervals can help to stimulate all this as well. And then finally, in relation to the spirit element of consciousness, or essentially the source energy, the tuning forks can take us on a journey to experience the so-called inner sounds, connecting us with the source of all sound and all life. You know, we can connect with the sacred sound current, the sacred sound stream, as a result of the kind of journey we can do with these tuning forks. So this is a very comprehensive, very powerful way of working with tuning forks. So let's look at each of the 10 steps in this integral sound healing process. And then after each step, what I'm going to do in this talk is to give you a few examples of how we can work with tuning forks in relation to each of these steps. So the first one is about connecting with your clients. Now we know that the quality of the relationship between you and your clients is critical to the success of the healing process. So what you need to do is to learn effective techniques to connect with your clients and to prepare yourself and your healing space for the sound healing sessions. And we do teach you how to do this in the other videos. So in terms of connecting with your clients and working with tuning forks, well, firstly, you can use, for example, a C256 Hz tuning fork to clear your energy and your healing space. So you can use this around yourself, in your biofield, in your sound energy body, your biosound energy field, to help to create patterns of wholeness and health and vitality, balancing out and removing any distortions that may be there. So you can do this before your clients arrive. And of course you can go around and clear patterns of disturbance that are maybe just in the space in the room. And so this is a space clearing essentially that you can do with a C256 Hz. You can use other tuning forks as well, but this is a really good one to use and is in that set. You can also use the grounding protocol that's described elsewhere in the course for yourself and your client at the start of the session. So this is where you use a sequence of two forks together. So you start off with the low C and the high C, so you're creating the octave, and then you use the C and the F, which essentially creates the interval of a fourth, and then you can again use the low C and the high C, so you're then going to create the octave again. So John Berlier found that that is a very effective way to help to ground. So you can do this for yourself and your clients. And one way to do that is to, as you activate the forks, you can firstly put them to your ears so you're experiencing the sounds and the intervals, and you can then, as they're still vibrating, put them to your client's ears so that they can hear it. So you're hearing it and then they're hearing it, and that helps with the client connection. Now, of course, there are many other things you can do as well to enhance the client connection, but we're just talking here specifically about the techniques associated with working with tuning forks. So this gives you a clear idea about what you can do and when in relation to each of the different steps. So that was step one. So step two is all about intention setting with healing sounds. So intention is recognized as a powerful healing force in mind-body medicine, and sounds carry and amplify intention. So again, what you need to do is to learn how to create what we call a sound intention transformation crucible for your clients to power up their sound healing journey in a 30-day cycle. So what we're recommending is that you get into a process with your clients where ideally once a week, it could be more often or once every 2 weeks, but ideally once a week, you see them and you do some work with them, and in between that, they're doing homework as well. And we'll come on to this in more depth in relation to making client recommendations later on in step 10. But essentially, if you do that over a 4-week or 30-day period, if they're actively engaged in this sound intention transformation crucible, which is also covered elsewhere in the course, then chances of the healing, the sound healing process being effective and successful are very, very high. This is all based on the work of Lynn McTaggart, and you can read about that in the book The Intention Experiment, where it's been shown that this way of working has a good track record. It's very reliable and effective as a way of working with intention. So what we've done is to look at how we can work with sounds as part of this whole intention setting process. And in this case, we're looking at how we can work with tuning forks. So the first thing to do is to take out your harmonic spectrum plus the other tuning forks as well. And you can do this at the beginning of even the first session, towards the beginning of the session, maybe after you've done the grounding and the client connection and all of that. You need to work with your clients based on what they've told you, why they're coming for the healing, and so on, to identify and set a clear intention. And while you're doing this, and once they've got clear on that, you can be working with the tuning forks. You can be placing them so they can hear them, and of course, if they're deaf or they've got a hearing impairment, they won't be able to hear them, but they can still experience the vibrations both on and off the body, and they can have a response. The body will have a response to those tuning fork vibrations, so their feelings and sensations will change in response to that. So the same principles apply as to when we're talking about this, about playing them to their ears. But what happens is that you then invite your client to hum a steady tone, vocalize a tone with each fork. It doesn't have to be a loud hum, it could be a quiet hum. And you can invite them to either match the pitch of the fork or to choose another pitch to harmonize with it, perhaps an octave or a third or a fifth above or below the note of the tuning fork. In fact, any note is fine. It's just to get them humming with it. And to do this for all the forks. And then once you've done that with the range of forks that you've got and that we've got in this course here, then you invite them to select a tuning fork that they like humming to the most, the one they find the most easy or comfortable to tone a sound with and alongside. So you choose essentially a tuning fork and note, and then with the humming, you then extend the humming into toning an R sound with the chosen fork and the pitch that they feel most comfortable with. And so what we've got there is we've now got an R sound connected up with a tuning fork, and the R itself is a kind of heart opening, it's a very empowering, it amplifies and the intention basically. And you can then invite them to do the rest of the sound intention protocol. You can take them through that and invite them to tone this sound with you while you play the chosen fork in a session, guiding them through the sound intention protocol. And then to do this for 30 days when they're at home as part of their homework, part of the work they do with sounds in between the sessions with you. So that's step 2, intention setting. Step 3 is about assessing energy field dynamics. So you need to learn how to use sound to assess imbalances in your client's energy fields and to help guide the treatment process as a result of that. So you can use, for example, the C526 Hertz tuning fork to do this. You could use another one. So this is all based on the work of Eileen McCusick, and she's written this up in the book Tuning the Human Biofield. You can use a tuning fork like the C256, which I've done many often, it's very successful, to scan your client's biosound field, the aura as well, and listen and feel for imbalances. Now this is where you need to develop your listening skills, but also of course when you're holding the tuning fork, this is the unweighted tuning fork, in your fingers while it's vibrating, you can feel the vibrations in your fingers, and you can feel changes in the vibrations as well as hear changes in the vibrations as you work with the tuning fork. Okay, and you can use these changes, which represent the imbalances ultimately, to guide the sound healing process. So you can use a tuning fork to help assess the quality and the state of balance or imbalance in your client's energy field. So this is and of course you can use the tuning forks to help to correct the imbalances as well, but this is just step 3, is about using sounds to assess the energy field dynamics. Step 4 is about co-creating resonance with healing sounds. So before the active work begins with the healing sounds in a session, we need to enable our clients to connect with their health challenges with a state of acceptance and unconditional love for themselves, first of all. Now, if we can do this for ourselves, then we can then help them to do that more easily for themselves. And if we're offering this quality of unconditional love, of kindness, of compassion, without judgment, without judging them in any single way, then they can bring those qualities to themselves. So we need to learn to work with breathing techniques and healing sounds to facilitate this step in the process. So this is based on the work of medical Dr. Leonard Laskow, written up in his book Healing with Love. Now, most of these people don't actually describe how to work with sounds in connection with these processes, but that's what we've developed and that's what we're doing here. So we can create or co-create. The point here being is that we're not just doing it for them, but we're doing it with our clients. So we're co-creating it together. And of course, what we know is that as our clients, the more actively engaged our clients are in the process, the more effective the healing process will be. So engaging them in this process right from the start is really important. And this is one way we can do it. So we can use the octave interval, the low C and the high C, for example, placing them beside the ears to create a sense of unity. This encourages the resonance to occur because it's often disease, ill health, illness aches and pains and so on, failure of organs, in fact, is a result of the sense of separation that we have between different parts of ourselves and between ourselves and others. So the octave interval does help to stimulate the sense of unity and breaks down the barriers that are created with separation. Now, the unison interval as well is also extremely powerful in this context. So this is where you have two of the same frequencies, for example, which could be a C256, or it could be any other two forks. It could be the G fork. So if you've had a whole body tuner and you've now got the harmonic spectrum set, you will have two of the same forks, two C's or two G's, for example, if you've got both sets. And you can place those two together at the same time around the ears or around a part of the body of your client. And what happens is that when two of the same frequencies come together, a cancelling of the frequencies occurs, and in the gap, a scalar energy emerges, which also helps to create the conditions for unconditional love to be present for the client. Okay, so that's the unison interval as well. So step 5 is about triggering the relaxation response with healing sounds. Now, chronic stress underlies 80% or more of the health challenges that your clients will present to you. So learning how to trigger the relaxation response with healing sounds to reduce stress and create calmness is really valuable. In fact, it's probably one of the most important things that you can learn to do. And here, this is based on the work of Herbert Benson. He's written a book called The Relaxation Response. So the Harvard Medical School, for example, has identified that chronic stress is associated with underlies 80% of the health challenges that are typically presented to physicians, to medical doctors in the US, but also elsewhere throughout the world. And the relaxation response helps to combat that chronic stress. So what can we do with tuning forks? Well, we can use the 128 Hertz on bones and connective tissue. This spikes the nitric oxide, which has the effect of triggering a whole physiological biochemical response that does combat the chronic stress and triggers relaxation. Placing the 64 Hertz in various places and points on the sacrum also does the same. And then we can use harmonizing intervals with the unweighted forks. The interval of a fourth using a C and F, for example, the fifth using the C and G, and the sixth using the C and A will also help to trigger the relaxation response. Step 6 is all about releasing and letting go with healing sounds. Pain, illness and disease is often the result of stuck or blocked energy, and this is usually associated with the repression or suppression of emotions relating to past trauma that hasn't actually been healed. So it's important to learn how to work with healing sounds to help your clients to release energy and let go of the patterns of ill health. You see, these suppressed, repressed emotions relating to past trauma, if they haven't been dealt with, if they haven't been let go of, then these emerge as patterns of ill health and symptoms of ill health in our body, in our emotions, and in our mental state. And this has been identified, for example, by an eminent psychotherapist and psychologist, David Hawkins, who wrote this book, Letting Go, The Path of Surrender. So if we can work with sounds to release and let go, then again, we have a very powerful means of helping our clients. So how can we do it? Well, there are certain intervals that are very releasing. The second using the C and D, for example, the seventh using the C and B, the interval of a third using the C and E. We can also use the weighted 128 Hertz and the weighted mid-om fork, the 136.1 Hertz, on joints and muscles, placing them together, because there's a difference of about 8 Hertz, 8.1 Hertz between these two forks. That is actually quite a dissonant, this is quite a dissonant interval. It's probably more dissonant than the typical second interval, the C and D, or even a sharp. But if you had it, a C and a C sharp, for example, this is a very dissonant interval. And so putting these two together actually creates the conditions for release and letting go on a physical level, but also emotionally, mentally, and so on. Now, this is powerful work, and it can trigger memories of the past trauma, which can also in themselves be very traumatic in the present day. And sometimes there can be an overwhelming flooding of emotions that you need to be able to handle. And one way to do that is to bring in the fourth interval, for example, the C and the F, to induce a state of calm. And you can also bring in the grounding protocols, which you already covered in step 1. So again, you can work with tuning forks as part of this process to help to bring about a sense of calm and to ground your clients if they have had a big emotional release as part of this process. So the 7th step is about transforming resistance with healing sound. So resistance to the successful outcomes of sound healing is a natural part of the process. It is very likely to occur. So you need to learn to spot the signs of resistance and how to gently transform the resistance with healing sounds into positive flow. So how can we do this with tuning forks? Well, again, we can work a bit similar to earlier with the octave interval, with the low C and the high C beside the ears. This creates a sense of unity, encouraging resonance to occur. So encouraging the sense of it's okay just the way we are. It's okay to be with the feelings of the resistance, for the resistance to be there. And in doing that, we can then allow the resistance, the energy behind the resistance and the positive intent behind the resistance and behind the original, behind the symptoms of ill health, of imbalance, of pain and so on, to also be present. And then again, also using the unison interval, two of the same frequencies, generating the release of the scalar energy. That is also really helpful in this context for step 7. So step 8, we're getting towards the end now, and of course not all of this has to happen in every session. We're talking here about a 10-step sound healing process that maybe is a process that occurs over 4, 6, 8, maybe even 10 sessions, something like that. But it can also, elements of these can also be present in many of the sessions. And although we talk about it like it's a 10-step process, as though it's almost like we're going up a set of steps in a sequence in a kind of orderly manner, it is actually a fluid process. These things all kind of dynamically interact and interrelate, and we wouldn't necessarily have to go through them in this order, in this sequence. But it is a sequence that actually does work and does have a real flow to it and is powerful if it's done like this. So the 8th step is about reforming patterns of wholeness with healing sounds. So when you've helped your clients to release the unhealthy patterns and transform the resistance, you'll need to consciously work with them to create new patterns of health, vitality and wellness. You've got to fill the void that's created by the release and transforming the resistance. Without filling the void consciously with new patterns, then the old patterns would just come back in again. So this is a bit like you've released the energy into the sound field. And some people previously talk about releasing unhealthy patterns, releasing pain and trauma into the light field. We're talking about doing this into the sound field. Yes, there may be a light component to it. And then in doing that, the whole thing is transmuted. And then we can then bring in the healthy patterns. So we need to learn how to do this effectively with healing sounds. So we're drawing here on the work of Bruce Lipton, who's written this book, The Biology of Belief, amongst others, where what we're recognizing is that often we need to transform the way we think about ourselves, the beliefs we hold about ourselves and about the healing process, and we need to cancel out some of these beliefs. So we can work with tuning forks in this process. Okay, so we can work with the harmonizing intervals, with the calming, balancing, harmonizing intervals to reform patterns of wholeness with healing sounds. So we can work with the interval of a 4th, the C and the F, for example, with the 5th, the C and the G, and with the interval of a 6th, the C and the A. So all of these 3 intervals will help in this process to reform patterns of wholeness. And then we can also invite our client to reactivate the healing intention while listening to their chosen frequency of tuning forks elected in step 2, and then also engaging in the vocal toning process. And we can do this alongside the other things that we're doing, maybe around the belief chain, cancelling out the beliefs and the protocol that's been developed for that, which you can find out about in the other elements of the course. So step 9 is about reflecting with healing sound. So the sound healing journey becomes deep, profound and long-lasting when we enable our clients to reflect on the process. So you need to learn how to work with sounds to facilitate this reflection and to stimulate an awakening of consciousness into present moment awareness. And that's the kind of key here, because often it's about encouraging our clients to engage in an active process of listening to the sounds, in this case of the tuning forks. So all the tuning forks you use, even if they don't hear it so much around their ears, they just need to be actively engaged. They're not just switching off and allowing you to provide the almost like the sound pill fix for them. They need to be actively engaged. And so one of the best ways of doing this is to encourage them to enter into this present moment awareness of feelings and sensations in the body while the weighted and unweighted tuning forks are played. Okay, so it's for them to notice at all times, from moment to moment, what's going on, what feelings and sensations do they have in the body. And this will change as you work with the tuning forks. And this is a key part of it. This is all part of the reflective process. You can also encourage your client to reflect on what's happening in themselves and so on as a result of this between sessions, alongside while they're doing the sound intention transformation protocol. And you can encourage your clients to keep a sound healing journal and to write up the reflections, their realizations, any images, symbols, thoughts, feelings, insights, beliefs that come up, that they see coming up, and just to capture those and write them up. And in doing that, that's also part of the reflective process. And that also helps to move things along and for the healing process to be more effective. And then finally, we come to the last step, which is about making sound-related recommendations. So the sound healing process is most effective when our clients are actively engaged in it, taking responsibility for their own health and wellness. Ultimately, all we're doing is in the sound healing process is triggering, releasing, activating, stimulating our clients' natural healing responses. And the more they're engaged in this process, the more those natural healing responses will be activated. So it's not like we can fix anything for them. We can just facilitate their own self-healing. And that's going to be more likely to occur the more they are engaged. So it is very important that we engage them both in the sound healing sessions themselves in various ways, and we've mentioned some of them here in this talk, and also that we encourage them to get engaged in the process in between the sessions. So you need to give them sound-related recommendations for them to do as homework in between the sessions with you. So they've come to you for sound healing, so they haven't come to you for dietary advice or exercise advice or processes. This is sound-related work, so it's important to give them sound-related recommendations. You can recommend that they drink lots of water and they eat well and sleep well and exercise and all these things. Of course, that is healthy and is good and vital, but you also need, and as part of this process, to give them the sound-related recommendations. So what could you do? You could encourage your client to do the sound intention transformation crucible process for 30 days, which we've already covered in this talk. So, and the role of tuning forks and vocal toning associated with the chosen tuning fork sounds is part of this crucible process. You can also encourage your client to buy and use one or more tuning forks for self-care and healing in between sessions. So if, for example, they have a wound that's not been healing and nothing from the so-called allopathic conventional medicine has helped to really help with the healing process, then you may find that one or more of the tuning forks that you've been using with them is really effective at helping the wound to heal quickly. And if they then, you could loan them then, but else maybe you could also buy and sell them to them as well and make a bit of extra money in the process, and they start using this fork or tuning forks at home, then that's also going to speed up the process. So you need to tell them why it's important, necessary and valuable to do this homework. You can demonstrate the techniques in the sessions and then teach them how to do it for themselves at home. And also it's important to check in with them at the start of each session how they're getting on with the homework that you've set for them. And so in doing this, you're kind of engaging in a coaching framework, which is going to help to stimulate them to do this and for this to be more effective. So that's the 10 steps in this process. So what should you do next? Well, it's important to get familiar with the information in all of the 3 downloadable charts that we've given you in this course. So one about auto-tuning forks, another one about working with musical intervals, and a third one about the tuning fork protocol. There's a lot of detailed information in those charts that's very, very valuable. And the more familiar you are with that, and the more you know that information, the more effective you'll be. And also, it is important that you view all the video tutorials covering both the tuning forks and how you can work with them, plus the 10-step integral sound healing process. There's a lot more information in those videos about that process that complements what we're doing here. You need to read the handbook. You should arrange a Skype or phone session with your tutor around tuning forks or something connected with this. You need to complete the workbooks and enjoy the process as well. So what I'd just like to do is just remind you, what do these 3 downloadable charts look like? So this is the one relating to auto-tuning forks. Then you've got the chart relating to working with musical intervals in tuning fork therapy or healing. So here is the intervals, the benefits and what they're good for. There's 2 pages to that. And then there are 2 pages for these tuning fork protocols, which is again drawing on the work of John Beaulieu. So love what you do, make a difference, help others with healing sounds today. So thank you for listening to this talk, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.